Hi, everybody. Hey, welcome to the York 912 Patriots monthly meeting. It's been since June since we've had a general meeting, so thank you for showing up. Can I get a raise of hands of who's new, who hasn't been to one of our meetings before? Thank you. Welcome. Appreciate your attendance. We have a pretty good show tonight. I was looking at kind of a light meeting tonight, and as it always occurs, about a week before the meeting starts, it kind of fills up, and then I'm turning people down for coming into the meeting and speaking. So tonight we got a full agenda. I'd like to start the night with the Pledge of Allegiance. You can be seated. And I'd like to, if you could, please bow your heads for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege to live in this country. Thank you for the ability to assemble legally here. And thank you for the ability to speak in your name, God. Thank you for all the people that serve in our armed forces. We pray that you encourage them, protect them, keep your hand on them. Thank you for dying on the cross for our sins, and thank you for forgiving my sins. Please be with the people here at the meeting. Lay your hand of grace on them. Give them the courage to do what has to be done to bring this country back to you. Dear Father, please help us to create another revival in your name in this country. Dear Lord, we know that you're the only way, and without you, this country will crumble and decay like so many other countries before. We pray that you put up a hedge of protection around our embassies and lay your hand of grace upon those that lost loved ones. We pray for peace and for God and for good to prevail over evil. We pray that the good, conservative, righteous candidates running for election this November realize victories, so this country may climb out of the immorality and destruction it seems so set on. Please be with our elected officials, guide them, provide them the means to lead our country back to solid conservative values. Give them the wisdom to make the correct decisions to lead this country. And please be with our president. Keep your hand on him. Create a softness in his heart to your word. Guide his actions, and please do not allow him to hurt our country any more than he has already. We pray these things in your holy name, Jesus. Amen. So, like I said, thank you very much for coming in tonight. It's been, the last couple weeks have been really active on the national front and actually the world front. I guess everybody you can't avoid the news on the embassies and what's going on over in the Middle East. And I think it's a very telling what's transpired from the administration on the response to these attacks on our sovereign soil and in the embassies. Please pray for those people that are protecting our embassies because they need your prayers. Generally, our group has kind of focused on local issues and state issues, but over the last couple months, we've been focusing on federal issues because the election's coming up November 6th. So with that in mind, our whole program tonight is geared toward the election in November. So we have a lot of initiatives going on. If you could, please help us out in these initiatives. It's your country. It's your responsibility to step up to the plate and help on these things. We have a number of events coming up. On September 20th, which is next Thursday, Adams County 912 Patriots are meeting over at the Cross Keys Motor Inn. They meet at 7 o'clock, same time, same evening Thursdays as we do. And their agenda is be prepared. And they have a preparedness committee, and they're going through canning and survival issues. The next thing actually on the agenda is York County Action has a movie night every September 18th and September 25th. The next, what is that? The 18th is Tuesday night. Next Tuesday and the following Tuesday. Next Tuesday, they're showing Agenda, Grinding America Down. And then the following Tuesday, they're showing Tyranny, the High Costs of Forgetting God. And they're being shown at the Spry Fire Hall at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evenings on Queen Street in Spry. We also have Philip Bus Rally, which is September 25th, which is Tuesday. And that runs from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock. We have a bus going up there. Jack and Sue Silcox will be talking about that later on. There's a Republican State Committee meeting Saturday, September 29th in Camp Hill at the Radisson. That's at 9:30 in the morning. Any support you can give us at the Republican State Committee would be much appreciated. And October 22nd or 27th, we have a cool 10th Amendment breakfast. And that's cool is... What's that acronym for? Cool. Constitution, Organization of Liberty. And they put on great classes. Actually, Mike Fulmer, State Senator Mike Fulmer is involved in that, and he's already taught one of the classes that we've had in this area. And then there's another thing that Dan Bradley wanted me to bring up, Spring Grove September Fest, which is next Saturday, the 22nd. He has rented a table there, and he's going to be there from 7 a.m. until noon, but he's going to have to leave at noon. But he has graciously offered for us to man the table to promote the York 912 Patriots and also House Bill 1776 and voter registration. So if you want to man that table, Ed Mundorf is taking names and writing them down for time slots for next Saturday from noon until about 7 o'clock. There's one thing I miss on this agenda. I have God Bless America and George Chaplin singing that. I don't want to miss this. I don't want you to miss this. So I want George to lead us in God Bless America.
Sorry about that. No problem. Let's all stand. And all of you are going to help me sing the national anthem, all right? Ready? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets spread glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, George. Okay, next on the agenda is we're going to show a video from Alan Horn, one of our members, and it's about a 10-minute video. If we can get somebody on either side of the room to get the lights, turn the lights down a little bit, please, I'd appreciate it.
Dispelling the myth that Mitt Romney was a failure while governing Massachusetts and the laughable position that there's no difference between Obama and Romney, with a little enlightening tax cut trivia to boot. Massachusetts' high debt and slowed job growth were problems that existed long before Romney took office as governor. Romney actually improved conditions in both of these areas during his term as governor. The state's ranking for job growth went from 50th the year before Romney took office to 28th in his final year. What nerve the Obama campaign has perpetuating the lie that Romney increased the Massachusetts state debt. Romney actually slowed Massachusetts' annual rate of debt from 5.8% to 1.9%. While conversely, under Obama's presidency, the national debt has reached the greatest level as a percentage of the gross domestic product since World War II. The bottom line, high debt and slow job growth were long-standing problems in Massachusetts before Romney took office. So Romney actually improved conditions in Massachusetts while he was governor. Now we will analyze Obama's claim that the economy he has had to deal with after taking office was the result of the previous administration and the Republicans. We will see how factual this claim actually is. Please make note of this date, January 3rd, 2007. That is the date that the Democrats took over the House of Representatives and the Senate. And for the first time since 1995, the Democratic Party controlled a majority in both chambers. This was also the date that Barney Frank took over the House Financial Services Committee and Chris Dodd took over the Senate Banking Committee. The economic meltdown that happened 15 months later was in what part of the economy? Banking and financial services. Add Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac dumping almost $6 trillion worth of toxic loans on the economy, and it's pretty obvious who's at fault in our economic collapse. Who fought to reform Fannie and Freddie? George Bush, 17 times, dating back to 2001. Who fought against reform of Fannie and Freddie? The Obama Senate and the Democratic Congress. Budgets do not come from the White House. They come from Congress. And the party that controlled Congress and the Senate since January 2007 was the Democratic Party. The Democrats inherited any deficit. It was 2007 deficit, the last of the Republican budgets. That deficit was the lowest in 5 years and the fourth straight decline in deficit spending. After that, Democrats in Congress took control of the spending. And that includes Obama and the Senate, who voted for those budgets. If Obama inherited anything, he inherited it from his own party. So when Obama says we cannot go back to the policies of the same party who got us into this mess, I could not agree with him more adamantly. Compare this man, a young Mitt Romney, to this, a young Barack Hussein Obama. When someone says there's no difference between these two, I say the contrast could not be more stark. Does this embarrass any of you? Bowing to these and other world leaders, apologizing for America and calling our country arrogant? Does Obama and his administration want to raise taxes? My best conclusion? It's simply a divisive class warfare tactic. The motivation can be nothing more than a political ploy, pandering to those who resent rich, successful people. People who feel wealth does not belong in the hands of the American people, but in the hands of our government to distribute as they see fit. Because if they really wanted to boost the economy and raise revenues, history shows us we should lower taxes even further and eliminate crippling regulations. Tax rates were slashed dramatically during the 1920s, dropping from over 70% to less than 25%. What happened? Personal income tax revenues increased substantially during the 1920s, despite the reduction in rates. Revenues rose from $719 million in 1921 to $1,164 million in 1928, an increase of more than 61%. Kennedy tax cuts. President Hoover dramatically increased the tax rates in the 1930s, and President Roosevelt compounded the damage by pushing the marginal tax rates to more than 90%. Recognizing that high tax rates were hindering the economy, President Kennedy proposed across-the-board tax rate reductions that reduced the top tax rate from more than 90% down to 70%. What happened? Tax revenues climbed from $94 billion in 1961 to $153 billion in 1968, an increase of 62%, 33% after adjusting for inflation. The Reagan tax cuts. Thanks to bracket creep, the inflation of the 1970s pushed millions of taxpayers into higher tax brackets, even though their inflation-adjusted incomes were not rising. To help offset this tax increase, and also to improve incentives to work, save, and invest, President Reagan proposed sweeping tax rate reductions during the 1980s. What happened? Total tax revenues climbed by 99.4% during the 1980s, and the results are even more impressive when looking at what happened to personal income tax revenues. Once the economy received an unambiguous tax cut in January of 1983, income tax revenues climbed dramatically, increasing by more than 54% by 1989, 28% after adjusting for inflation. The Bush-era tax cuts. From 2004 to 2007, federal tax revenues increased by $785 billion, the largest four-year increase in American history. According to the Treasury Department, individual and corporate income tax receipts were up 40% in the 3 years following the Bush tax cuts. And bonus, the rich paid an even higher percentage of the total tax burden than they had at any point in time in the previous 40 years. Again, why would Obama want to raise taxes above Bush-era levels? With whom was Obama associated when he launched his political career? William Charles Ayers and wife Bernadine Dorm. Why no hand on his heart here? Could it be the shared values between he and his friends and colleagues mentioned above? Let's take a closer look at these two. William Ayers, prominent leader of the violent Weatherman Group. The group was associated with other international communist guerrilla and terrorist groups, including the Viet Cong. Its objective was the furtherance of Soviet foreign policy and the defeat of the U.S. in Vietnam. In May of 1970, the organization issued a declaration of war against the United States, authored by Bernadine Dorm, who was later to become Ayers' wife, but not until other members of the group, including Ayers' girlfriend at the time, blew themselves up in a bomb-making factory in Greenwich Village in New York. Ayers stated, "I'm not so much against the war as I am for a Vietnamese victory. I am not so much for peace as I am for a U.S. defeat." In 1970, Ayers urged his followers to kill all the rich people, the 1% from an Occupy perspective. Break up their cars and apartments, bring revolution home, kill your parents. That's where it's really at. In 1974, William Ayers, Bernadine Dorm, Jeff Jones, and other members formed the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee, the publishing arm of the Weather Underground organization. The name was inspired by mass murderer Mao Zedong, who said, "A single spark can set a prairie fire." Its first book was Prairie Fire, The Politics of Revolutionary Anti-Imperialism. In this book, William Ayers admits that he's a communist. Bill Ayers and Barack Obama worked together at the Chicago Annenberg Challenge, CAC, from 1995 to 1999, an organization that funneled money to Acorn. Obama joined Ayers again as a board member in a paid 9-member board for the Woods Fund in Chicago from 1999 to 2002. But hey, he was just a guy in the neighborhood, Obama said. All right. How in God's name was Obama allowed to become our president when he could not even pass the background check to be on his own Secret Service security detail due to his associations? Now we have the Muslim Brotherhood in key positions within the Department of Homeland Security. Operational and state secrets are being leaked in unprecedented numbers. Why are there no safeguards in place to stop this?
It is just wonderful to be back in Oregon. I've now been in 57 states, 57 states, 57 states.
What did you say?
I've now been in 57.
The man who I believe has a new vision for America.
57 states.
The man
President Obama
has a new vision,
57.
new bold path for our country.
56,
57 states.
56,
57.
56, 50, 50, 50,
57.
24,
57 states.
24,
57.
24.
50.
What's the matter? Is he stupid?
50.
Some people out there in our nation don't have that.
Is he stupid?
And over the last 15 months, we've traveled to
New Hampshire, California,
Alaska and Hawaii.
Indiana.
South Africa and the Iraq.
Candy Mountain.
Mars? Isn't that lovely?
I've now been in
Over 9,000.
states.
What, 9,000?
That doesn't even make sense.
Shun the non-believer. Shun.
7 states. 57 states.
He knows who we can be.
57.
The man who I believe has a new vision for America.
57.
24.
25.
Barack Obama, hello.
I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
Dispelling the myth.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. The next up on our agenda is Randy DeSoto with Americans for Prosperity. They have an initiative that he wants to present to you tonight. And would you give a warm hand to Randy DeSoto? You might recognize Randy. Randy was Mark Scaringi's campaign manager when Mark ran for the U.S. Senate in the spring. So welcome, Randy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here with Americans for Prosperity, and what our group is all about is lower taxes, limited government, promoting prosperity. And so while we don't advocate for our particular candidates, we do advocate for positions. And so we do have our, I'll show you a picture here in a moment, Obama's failing agenda tour. And we also, so we were just doing a bus tour actually in Berks County yesterday, and I was one of the organizers there. We had a wonderful turnout. Here's some of the folks. So it was a midday rally outside of Reading, and so we came, we did a big picnic lunch, and have some speakers talk about Obama's agenda and how he said the private sector is doing fine. And so it's just a way to gain profile, and all of it's geared towards recreating what was done in Wisconsin, which, with Scott Walker's recall election, where we were able to partner with local groups such as yours and activate them and provide them the resources they needed through phone banking, tablets to go do neighborhood walks and whatever, and just get people engaged. So they took Wisconsin, which has been, of course, traditionally, blue state, and they were able to reelect Scott Walker, so he won twice. And I was at the national summit with Americans for Prosperity, and it was interesting to hear the kind of the story behind all that. It was just an amazing grassroots undertaking. So I guess the bottom line is that Pennsylvania, is less blue than Wisconsin. And of course, 2010, we had a major change in leadership here and major policy differences. And so we're trying to promote those policies here in Pennsylvania. And so I'd like to show you a video that's been playing in some of the swing states that's been getting well received. And I think it's pretty even keel, and it just lays out some of the problems that President Obama's policies have created for America.
In 2008, I voted for President Obama with no reluctance.
He presented himself as something different.
I had hoped that the new president would bring new jobs, not major layoffs, not people going through major foreclosures on their homes.
He did get his health care through, but at what cost?
He said he was going to cut the deficit in his first term. I've seen zero interest in reducing spending. He inherited a bad situation, but he made it worse.
I think he's a great person. I don't feel he is the right leader for our country, though.
I still believe in hope and change. I just don't think Obama's the way to go for that.
The president has not earned re-election in 2012, in my book.
I've seen his now definition of hope and change. It's not the hope and change I want. It's not the hope and change I thought I was going to get. I don't feel that I helped my grandchildren by voting for President Obama, and I regret that.
Americans for Prosperity is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now, the interesting thing is on MSNBC, they actually reviewed this ad, and it's interesting to hear what they say.
The smartest ad I've seen in the last 24 hours is the new Americans for Prosperity ad that the Koch brothers financing, where they take former Obama voters.
Yes, very good.
One after another, and it's...
Why don't we run that right now? Let's run it and then talk about it, Tom.
In 2008, I voted for President Obama with no reluctance.
He presented himself as something different.
I had hoped that the new president would bring new jobs, not major layoffs, not people going through major foreclosures on their homes.
He did get his health care through, but at what cost?
He said he was going to cut the deficit in his first term. I've seen zero interest in reducing spending. He inherited a bad situation, but he made it worse.
I think he's a great person. I don't feel he is the right leader for our country, though.
I still believe in hope and change. I just don't think Obama's the way to go for that.
The president has not earned re-election in 2012, in my book.
I've seen his now definition of hope and change. It's not the hope and change I want. It's not the hope and change I thought I was going to get. I don't feel that I helped my grandchildren by voting for President Obama, and I regret that.
Americans for Prosperity is responsible for
So
the
I forgot that
content
they
of this
replayed the whole darn thing,
advertising.
but now you'll see
Tom,
the MSH
that gets at an issue that a lot of senior Republicans have been talking about. They said the challenge for the Romney campaign is to persuade people who hired Obama that it's now time to fire Obama. It's time not to give him a second shot. And most of those people that you saw in that ad were speaking more in sorrow than in anger about things that happened. It was very low key. So we'll see what the impact of that is. But that's a demonstration of what we're in for, because that's financed by a super PAC.
Yep.
Doesn't come out of the Romney campaign.
Well, it's interesting. How could the Democrats respond to that? So what would be their sort of message like that? And I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very effective that way.
It's to scare the hell out of people.
Right.
Romney,
Right. Not that tone, though.
Yeah. Mitt Romney's
which is a great
rich
tone.
guy. He killed my wife, and he doesn't pay tax.
The smartest ad I've seen in the last
that's probably
24
enough of
hours
that.
is the new Americans for Prosperity ad that the Koch brothers financing, where they take
So yeah, that's the ad. So anyway, it was just interesting that even MSNBC had to kind of say, well, it's a good ad. and I think it's effective. It just kind of lays it out there. And so that's the tone that Americans for Prosperity takes. We're just advocating policies. We're not trying to beat up on the man individually. We're not even, we can't directly oppose them for the election. We just can say we don't like those policies. And so the choice really going forward as a country is, do we think it's a moment of change or do we go forward? Each election's about that. Each time's about that. And so in '88, we decided we wanted to go forward. So we went forward with Bush. Or, here in Pennsylvania, we gave Clinton a second term. So we'll have to decide, we have those sort of decisions facing us as we go into this election season. So what Americans for Prosperity will do here in York is we're going to one night a week have a phone bank. We want to do it here in this hotel. We still need to get all that finalized and set up. But, and then if we see a good, strong interest, we'll do it more. We are going to have a permanent headquarters up in Harrisburg that's about up and running. We're going to have one in Berks County. And so we're just going into areas where we feel like people are available and want to work and want to make a difference. As Jen Stefano, who was in that first picture, she's our state director, and she's on Hannity fairly often and talking about these issues. But she made a great speech yesterday, and she said, really, we don't want to look back. She calls it her general Patton speech. We don't want to look back, talking to our grandchildren and say, at this critical moment, we didn't step up. We could have done something, but we didn't. And now our country is far diminished, and your future is nothing like the future that I was given when I was your age. And so that's the heart of what Americans for Prosperity is doing. We really want to see the country turned back towards the ideals of limited government, personal freedom, economic opportunity. So I'll be in the back and taking names if you're interested in helping us. And as I said, I think we have an opportunity to make a difference here in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Please help Randy out, because Americans for Prosperity is providing the facility, they're providing the phones, they're providing food. Just take an hour or two out of your time to come over right here in this hotel and help out with the phone bank. We should have something set up. Randy, I was busy doing something else, but Randy was talking about possibly this Saturday, but more likely next week it'll start. And what we'll do is we'll do a blast email and let you know what night it is. And then if you can, in the meantime, sign up with Randy and let him know that you're willing to help out, that would be a big help. Then he can get a hold of you and then schedule you in to help out with the phone bank. So thank you, Randy, very much. I appreciate it. See, this is the difference between 2008 and 2012. None of this was around in 2008. There was no organization on the conservative side, but now there is. So we should really take advantage of it. The next person I'd like to introduce, it's another initiative that we have, and this is a statewide initiative. Jack and Sue Silcox, they're heading up the Fill a Bus project. It's actually a rally up in Harrisburg for House Bill 1776, the property tax elimination bill. Jack and Sue, you are up. So We have a bus that's going up there on the 25th, which is Tuesday. It's 2 Tuesdays from now, and it's $10 for the bus. We're probably going to be providing food along with the bus ride, and Sue's on her way up here right now, and I'll let her explain the rest of that for you. Thank you, Sue.
I have several things to talk about regarding this trip to Harrisburg. First of all, we're making a big effort to fill a bus. And I have some sign-up sheets here that I'm going to pass around, and I would just ask that you fill them out and get them back to me before you leave tonight. We'll just circulate them among the crowd here tonight. The cost is $10, and I would really like to have the money come in with your reservation, so that we're going to have to pay for this bus if it doesn't get full. So we want to know we're able to do that. The second thing is, when we go to Harrisburg, we have been asked to develop signed petitions stating that we are in favor of HB 1776 and SB 1400. How many people here know what these two laws are? Because for the benefit of those of you who are not aware of it, there are two bills that they're both virtually the same. Their intent is to eliminate school tax on residential property. It would be a huge benefit to so many people. And so I hope that you will be willing to sign. I have some petitions here that I'm going to pass around, just to sign your name and your address. And you would be complete with your address, so if they check on seeing where you live and that sort of thing, they'll know it's okay. And then the third thing is, as part of this effort, we are encouraging people to write letters to 3 of our Pennsylvania statesmen: Senator Mike Brubaker, Senator Dominic Pileggi, and Senator Joseph Scarnati. And those are the 3 senators who are the power behind the throne, so to speak. Those are the ones that it will take to get these bills put on the floor of the House and the Senate. They can never be voted on if they don't reach the floor. So this is really critical. And I would encourage you to write a letter to all of these, or any one of them, at least one letter. And these cannot be emails. They don't read their email. Senator Fulmer told us that writing email is a waste of time because they get thousands of them and they can't possibly read them. But they pay a lot of attention to a letter that is mailed directly to them. So I have copies of these addresses, and you can see me after the meeting, and I'll be happy to share these with you. But we hope to have this bus filled up, so please see Jack or me after the meeting tonight and let us know how you make out with these sheets. Also, I have one. We circulated a DVD that has a good description of this legislation, and I have one copy with me tonight. I've circulated it around in different places, and I thought tonight I would bring it here. And if anybody here would like to take it home and hear it, and then just continue passing it, I don't want it back. I just want you to keep it moving, so that people can get a really good understanding of what these 2 bills are all about. So if anybody who's interested in starting this, you please see me afterwards, and I'll be glad to help.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. This is a statewide initiative by the Tea Parties in Pennsylvania. It was started in Berks County, and it's spread. Berks County has 2 buses. I believe Adams County has a bus. Harrisburg, they don't need a bus. They're there. But all over the state, there's buses going into Harrisburg on the 25th and going to these legislators' offices and letting them know that this is what we support. So it's a great initiative. We have a third initiative that's not on the agenda, but I'd like to have Bill Fay come up and speak a little bit about a postcard campaign that I got an email from the Bluffton Tea Party down in South Carolina, and they're adopting our Senate race. So they sent us an idea of what we can do to help out a conservative get elected in Pennsylvania, and I think it's really cool. And the thing is that Bluffton, South Carolina is right outside of Hilton Head, and my wife and I and the family are going down to Hilton Head on Saturday, so we're going to have an opportunity to meet with this woman who sent the email. So I'm going to cede the floor to Bill, and Bill explain the program to you. Bill Fay.
Saving the country one postcard at a time. That's one vote at a time. This postcard blitz, as Scott has said, is organized by folks down in South Carolina who have obtained lists of undecided voters in several states, and one of those states is Pennsylvania. I believe they got over 21,000 names of undecided voters in Pennsylvania. And so the idea is this. Each person commits and buys a number of postcards. You can get these postcards at post office for 35 cents, or just use your own 4x6 card and put 32-cent stamp on it, and that'll work fine. Then individually, we don't pre-print these things. Individually, you fill out a name and an address that I'd provide for you and a message on the back. Now, they've given you several options here, and I can email these options to you, but let me just give you the flavor of one of them. Dear whoever, Barack Obama and Bob Casey have failed us. They're taking the country in the wrong direction towards socialism or worse. We need to change the course before it's too late. Please vote for Romney, Ryan, and Tom Smith. They know how to fix our country and the economy. Tom Smith in the Senate will help restore jobs and prosperity. And then you sign it as a fellow American with your name. This is all handwritten out. And you might even note at the bottom, I paid for this postcard. Just to make it clear that this is citizen-to-citizen encouragement for them to vote and to get involved in November. And so if you'd like to be part of this, you can buy 10 postcards. They suggest buying 100 postcards. And in your spare time while you're watching television or babysitting the grandkids or whatever, you just fill out the names and addresses and handwrite out the message on the back and then send them in sometime probably in October. Be a good time. You don't need to mail them right away, but get them all filled out and then mail them in October. If you want to take down my email address, I'll give you my email address because I can send all these things to you by email. I have a sign-up sheet in the back next to Ed's computer there. If you want to just give me your name and phone number and email address if you have it, or I can contact you by phone and get these materials to you. My email address is WN, F as in Frank, AY, at Comcast.net. And I've already gotten a list of 500 names from Jane down in Buffington. Email address again, WNFAY at Comcast.net. And because I have all these things on file, I can just quickly email these to you. And if you say, I've got 100 postcards, I'm ready to go, then I'll send you a list of 100 names. And you can start working. Sign-up sheets back in the back. The whole idea is to make it personal. The more personal we make it look, the more effective it'll be, as from you, a citizen, state of Pennsylvania, to another citizen in the state of Pennsylvania who just happens to be undecided about the way to vote in November. Any questions? I'll be back in the back afterwards too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So those are all kinds of things you can get involved in right now. We're making the individual members of the York 912 Patriots and Americans for Prosperity are making these things available for you. So you don't have to create the wheel. You just have to go along for the ride, but you have to drive sometimes. So thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate it. There's one other thing that's coming up. George Chaplin set up a table. We have a table scheduled at the West Manchester Mall next Saturday, the 22nd. We have a lot going on next Saturday, the 22nd. We have Spring Grove, September Fest. We also have this registration table at the West Manchester Mall. If you could sign up for 1 or 2 hours. That'd be fantastic. Ed, starting at 8 o'clock, ending at 8 o'clock. 8 to 8, I would think. So Ed has a sign-up sheet for that also. Ed's there behind the computer. He's at the sales table. As a matter of fact, we have things there for sale. We have new merchandise. We have Don't Tread on Me license plates. We have more Don't Tread on Me flags. We have pamphlets. We have books. We have hats. Anything that's paid for over there goes towards the York 912 Patriots and for what we paid for the merchandise. Right now, I'm trying to speed through this because we want to get to the forum, and we're at the forum part right now. So Matt Briat has been gracious enough to accept our invitation to be moderator of this forum this evening. Matt Briat is the president of the Commonwealth Foundation. He's on his way up here right now. They're doing good things in the state. They're more focused on the state. I'm sure you've heard him on Durgan. He fills in for Bob Durgan on WHP quite a bit. He was on Gary Sutton's show this morning, battling Gary Sutton. So I'm going to cede the floor to Matt, and then Matt can introduce the candidates. How we're going to work this out, the candidates are going to have 5 minutes each. Scott Perry is not here right now. He's coming up from Washington. He should be here between 8 and 8:30. He won't have 5 minutes because we'll be in the middle of the forum, but he can sit right in and get slotted in with the questions. We'll give Scott a little bit more time at the end, but there's 5-minute introduction. I've given Matt a number of questions from a Tom Smith questionnaire that I came across on Sunday. Tea Party leaders came up with this questionnaire. There are 4 pages of questions on it. There's no way I could disseminate all those questions. I left that up to Matt to decide what he wanted to ask. So he's going to ask a question to whatever candidate he wants. Matt has the run of the show, basically, and the candidates have 90 seconds to answer. At the end, they have a minute closing, and then the meeting's over, and you can all say goodnight. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt right now. If you could explain a little bit about Commonwealth Foundation, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Whoa. That's hot. Well, thank you all for inviting me back here. I guess it's been about 6 months or so since we were here with the Republican candidates, all for U.S. Senate. And it's always my pleasure to come down here and be with you folks because you're engaged, and we need more and more people engaged that are going to take action, not just show up to vote, but are encouraging others to take action. At the Commonwealth Foundation, as Scott said, we're focused on things at the state level primarily, and certainly the things that happen at the state level will have a dramatic impact on what goes on at the federal level. Certainly you will see that most of the people in our Senate, 74 of them to be exact, have all come from lower levels of government. So we're, in a sense, the farm team. And in fact, of course, if Scott Perry is elected to Congress, he will be another one who has gone from state government to federal government. And so what we do at the state level is certainly important. Will have an impact on what's going on at the federal government level. And hopefully we'll start saying no to the feds a heck of a lot more than we have, because zero is going to be a lot more. It's not going to be a high hurdle to get over. So why don't we get into the debate and have the candidates who are all here come on up, and we will have you seated and have you all give your 5-minute introduction. And if you go shorter, I'm sure everybody will be fine with that as well. So we have lots of opportunity for questions from the list that Scott gave me. And what we'll do is, yes, please thank them for coming. What we'll do, we'll just start from nearest me. We'll start with Mike Koffenberger, who is a Libertarian candidate for the 4th Congressional, and then we'll move down the line. So, Mike, the floor is yours.
Okay. Will we do it from here or over there?
Whatever's comfortable for you. Up to you.
This one's still on? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Koffenberger. I'm the Libertarian candidate for the 4th District. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I do appreciate the invitation. little bit of information about myself. I'm 41 years old. I'm married. I have 2 boys, one of which is in the back there. I'm going to embarrass him now. He's waving in the back. They're the reason why I'm running. We live in Stewartstown, which is in the southern part of York County, and we came up here a little over 11 years ago now, and we really enjoy Pennsylvania. We came from Maryland, so we escaped Maryland. Pennsylvania is a wonderful place, and we really enjoy being here. My boys are the exact reason why I'm running. I got a little involved in politics probably about 4 or 5 years ago during the last presidential election in that cycle. I was a big Ron Paul fan at the time, and I was trying to figure out who is this guy. None of the other candidates like him. They all make fun of him, so I read his book, and when I read his book, he really inspired me, and from that point on, I read a lot more about politics and history and economics, and I felt if my sons were to ask me in the future, what did you do to try to change the direction of our country, I can at least say I tried to run for Congress. So they're the reason why I'm running. My platform is very a limited government platform, sticking to the Constitution. The biggest problem that we have in our country today is our debt. I think everybody realizes that our debt is strangleholding everything. So that needs to be addressed, and it hasn't been addressed. We just keep adding to it. The guys in Washington, both Republicans and Democrats, nothing gets passed, nothing gets done. They can't even pass a budget in the Senate. It's time that we end all that. We need some people to go to Washington that really want to work on the problems and try to fix them. I'm very much for limited government and a constitutional government. I'm for going through each and every agency, department, regulation, determining whether or not it meets the Constitution. If the federal government's not supposed to be in charge of it, we should eliminate it. It goes back to the states. The federal government has taken all this power away from the states, and it's where it belongs. I'm for, we talked about taxes, and there was a program on earlier. I'm for eliminating all federal taxes, the income tax, the death tax, the estate tax, the billions of other ones that you can name, and we need to replace it with something simple, something that everybody can understand, that nobody can manipulate, and that's what I believe is a consumption tax on everything except for food and medicine. I think that will go a great way towards reducing our problems. Also, another big problem that we have is our foreign policy. We have over 800 bases and outposts across the world. And they're in over 100 countries. We're way too involved. We've become the empire, I think, that we fought against in the Revolutionary War. Some other problems that we have to work on that I am for and against. Obamacare needs a full repeal. The National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which was probably one of the only bipartisan bills that were passed by Congress this year, is not good. It allows any one of us to be snatched out and locked up without habeas corpus rights for any reason, whatever they come up with. That's dangerous, no matter which party you're in. And also the Patriot Act. Just like the Affordable Care Act, the Patriot Act, they had the name Patriot, so if you voted against it, it was unpatriotic. That's how childish we've gotten in Washington. And the Affordable Care Act, they had to name it affordable because it's unaffordable. So appreciate you listening tonight. I hope you listen with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We'll go to Harry Perkinson, the Democrat candidate for the 4th Congressional. And by the way, is it Chad? Chad is sitting here in front of you all with cards so that if you start getting close to time, he'll start to let you know.
Good evening. My name is Harry Perkinson. I'm the Democratic nominee for the 4th Congressional District here in Pennsylvania. This is my first foray into politics, and I'm doing it because what I saw coming out of Washington made me think that it was seriously broken and we needed to send people who hadn't done it before for a living and wanted to go down there and not make a career out of it, but instead go solve the problems that we had. I'm from York County. I live outside of Dallastown in York Township. I'm married. I have 2 daughters, both of whom are in college right now. We've lived here my wife is from Adams County. I moved into the district in 1984. My children were born in York Hospital. I'm an engineer, not a career politician. I really like what I do for a living in terms of being an engineer. It's very stimulating work. Most of the stuff I do is working on research and development for our warfighters in the Department of Defense, making things that make them safer or more efficient or less costly to operate. And I enjoy that job. It's a great challenge and a lot of variability. But the reason I'm running for Congress is what I saw coming out of Washington is not what we need. We need somebody that's going to go to Washington and represent the people of this district first and foremost. We don't need somebody going to Washington who's going to sign up for the party agenda and play party politics. That's what we've been getting out of Washington for the last 2 years, party politics, and we need to change that. We have serious problems, and it's going to take serious efforts by people who are willing to sit down and work together and come up with the solutions. I personally think the most pressing thing we have is the economy. We have to get this economy going and get more jobs created so we can get people off of unemployment and the people that are underemployed back to full employment. When we do that, we can begin to talk about addressing the debt and the deficit. With the economy going at a much higher rate, right now we're below 2%. We need about 2.4 to really sustain ourselves in terms of GDP growth. And I'm looking to see an economy that's growing over 3% a year. And if we do that, we can really draw down on the deficit. We should be able to, the tax receipts without changing anything in the tax code, we should have more tax receipts, more income coming in, and be able to start to address this deficit. The deficit that we have can be, 55% of it can be attributed to the tax cuts that were put in place in 2003. And 14% of the deficit that we have now can be attributed to the unfunded wars that we fought and are still fighting. I think public education is one of the investments we have to make in this country. We're ranked 30th right now in the industrialized world in terms of how our education system works. Those 29 countries in front of us are the countries we're competing for those high-paying jobs. And we need to have a workforce that can compete on that market. So we need to improve the education system. The other issue I find super critical, and it was already addressed in some ways by Mr. Koffenberger, was our personal rights, our civil rights. And there is something dramatically wrong with the way we're going if the President of the United States can declare you a terrorist, you, an American citizen, a terrorist, and have you killed without due process. That's wrong. It needs to be changed. And if elected, I will go to Washington and fight very hard to change that. Same thing with the Patriot Act. The government has no business listening to your phone calls or reading your emails without going through due process, without getting a warrant to do so. That's the way the system works. We shouldn't shortcut it in order to think we have more security. As Benjamin Franklin says, the people that give up their rights for security wind up with neither. So we need to look at that. And the other thing I'm really pretty adamant about is that we need to be able to pass clean air and clean water down to the following generations. Once you get them dirty, they're really, really hard to remediate. So those are my 4 basic principles. And thank you very much for having me here tonight. I look forward to answering any of the questions you might have.
Thank you, Harry. Next, we'll hear from Wayne Wolf, the independent candidate.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Wolf. I'm the independent candidate for the 4th District, U.S. Congress. I live in North Hopewell Township in southern York County on an 82-acre farm with my wife. We moved up 11 years ago from the free state of Maryland. I first got into politics. I worked on Governor Ehrlich's governorship campaign down in Maryland back in the early 2000s. I have 2 grown daughters that live in Harford County, Maryland. I want to thank Scott for inviting me to speak to you tonight. And after he gave me the invitation, I took a look at your website to find out what your organization was about and what issues concern you. And despite the deplorable state of an American economy, and I think we'll probably get to some of those questions during the Q&A, I believe the erosion of individual rights by the government is the most serious threat to our way of life here in the United States. The story goes, as Benjamin Franklin was leaving the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, September 18, 1787, which is almost 225 years to the day from tonight, a woman asked him, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" Mr. Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." Sadly, that republic is becoming a distant memory. Consider, back at that time, with the tragic exception of slavery, the United States was a society in which people could, by and large, engage in any occupation or economic enterprise without a government permission or government regulation, where people could travel anywhere in the world without restriction and trade with anyone they pleased without permission of government officials, where people could accumulate unlimited amounts of wealth without government interference because the Constitution did not permit the government to levy taxes on income, where people were free to do whatever they wanted to do with their own money, save, spend, donate, invest, hoard it, burn it, destroy it, where government was not permitted to take care of people. No Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, welfare, education grants, or foreign aid. With few exceptions, there was no compulsory public school systems, no war on drugs, poverty, or wealth. Today, by contrast, we have the Patriot Act, TSA, unconstitutional surveillance of American citizens by government agencies. My gosh, the FBI lost 12 million iPad records. What law gave them the automatic access to those records in the first place? These are just a few examples of how our Constitution's been trampled upon. Folks, we're being assaulted by our own mutated creation. And I have no idea where it's going to end, but it must be stopped. And I appreciate your support in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Well, some of the things that you all said, I'd like to build on them or have some greater explanation, and then we've got some of these questions, some good ones, even some current ones. But I think Harry hit on something that is important in talking about party politics. So a question for you, Harry, and then I'd like the others to respond as well. What is it about your party's platform or its principles that you embrace the most, and then also the things where you disagree the most with your party?
Well, I like to think of the Democratic Party as being highly tolerant. It's a big tent party. It doesn't matter what your race, religion, belief system, or your personal preferences are. You can come to the party. It's the part I like about it is I once was talking to my boss at work, and he was saying that we should have a split system of government where the presidency is one party and the Congress is another party, because that way everything is gridlocked and nothing really bad happens. And I said, well, if you really want that, you should just vote for all Democrats, because none of them agree on anything. So the specific party platform, I didn't have any objections to what I saw on the platform. I think that the real key is not to go to Washington and carry water for the party. The real key is go to Washington and carry, represent the people of the district, and that's what I intend to do.
Okay, Mike, what about the Libertarian Party, things that really characterize the principles that you would take to Washington, and other things that you say, well, that I don't fully agree with Libertarian Party principles here?
Well, truth be told, when I was first able to vote, I was in college and I registered as a Democrat. And when I got out of college and got a job, I became a Republican. I was a Republican until about 2 years ago when the party, and I actually became a local committee person, and 3 months after that, everything had built up and I'd had enough. I was a Sam Rohr supporter and constantly watching the party always endorse candidates 3 months before the primary takes your choices away. You may really like a choice for a candidate, but the party takes it away. They endorse a candidate, and once they endorse a candidate, that's where all the money and volunteers go. I had enough of the major parties at that point in time. I found the Libertarian Party. I agree with the platform. The big catchphrase is minimum government, maximum freedom, and that's what I believe in. So.
Mike, let me just have a follow-up. Some say that if they vote for you, they will actually be casting a vote for President Obama if they vote for Romney versus Gary Johnson or for Harry Perkinson.
Okay, well, if you vote for me, you'll be casting a vote for me. If more of you cast votes for me, then I'll win, and Mr. Perkinson or Mr. Perry and Mr. Wolf won't win. That's just the way voting works. So I don't subscribe to that myth.
All right, Wayne, what are your policy positions as an independent party member or representative, and maybe how they differentiate from the Libertarian, Republican, and Democratic Party positions and principles?
Yeah, I feel a little left out because I don't have a party. I'm the independent guy. But
party of one.
I had a similar experience as Mike did down there. When I was first able to vote, I voted in the '72 election for McGovern, and I was just in college at the time. And 4 years later, I was married and had a house and soon to have a child, and I voted for Ford. And I've flip-flopped from Democrat to Republican, and really haven't found a party on either side of the aisle that has really stood up for the American citizen and for what's right for this country. And it seems that in the last decade or so, it's gotten progressively worse. And the people down in Washington, the Republicans or the Democrats, are just towing the party line. And as an independent, if you folks send me to Washington, I'm going to vote what's best for the country and best for the citizens of the country and of the district, and not be beholden to the John Boehners and the Nancy Pelosi's down there.
Mike, given the current events in Libya, give us your assessment of how President Obama has handled the situation so far, and also feel free to critique Governor Romney's response as well.
I tried to catch as much as I could about what's been going on, because it's been coming in kind of quickly. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they did catch the people that did kill our ambassador. Anybody know for sure? That would have been my first reaction, to go after the people that did do that. Our embassies in other countries are supposed to be our soil, per se, okay? We also have embassies here with the same agreement. As far as the way President Obama has handled it, or Governor Romney, I think Governor Romney played politics a little bit too much with it at first, criticizing Obama before all the facts were in. But it's hard to say. I guess time will tell. You can't rush and send a battleship group over there and just blow up the country because one of our embassies was attacked. But it's a very dangerous situation. It's very volatile, and it's definitely something that is going to be in the news and in everybody's hearts and minds here for at least the next few months until it's resolved.
Wayne, your thoughts on this?
I think the problem has occurred because we backed the wrong side in the Middle East. Mr. Obama's, I don't know if it's on purpose or it's a lack of understanding, but when you allow the Muslim Brotherhood to come into power into these countries, you're setting yourself up for situations that occurred in there. We may not like the Gaddafis and the Assads of the world, but as bad as it is, it's better than what we're seeing happening now. To echo Mike's remarks earlier on, we have 700 to 800 bases across the world in 63 different countries, and sometimes, oftentimes, we get ourselves in trouble because we're in places where we're not wanted. I believe in a strong defense, but when we get embroiled in some of these local situations down there, this is the result. At this point, I think we should go in and, of course, try to catch the people, just as Jefferson did back in the early 1800s with the Barbary Pirates. We can't stand for lawlessness wherever it happens, but in the future, we should try to avoid these situations.
Harry.
It was unfortunate that the incident became political domestically here. We should actually go after the people that perpetrated the crime and punish them. We should do so selectively, almost surgically. We have the resources to do that. We've demonstrated time and time again in the Far East. We can reach out and touch somebody very quickly once we find out who and where they are. I think that that's what we should do here. I think we should not inflame the situation by making it a political issue, and just let the special forces and the military and our intelligence services find out who these people are and go get them.
Let's move to the issue of taxes. We all know that government has no money of its own. It only has what it first takes from all of us. We also know that we have to pay some taxes for core functions of government. We'll start with you, Wayne. Are we paying too much, too little, or just enough? And if you are elected to Congress, what changes would you make to federal taxation?
Well, yeah, I think we're taxed too much. The present income tax, which was instituted nearly 100 years ago, of course, according to the original Constitution, is unconstitutional. The federal government didn't have the power to do that, and that's since changed. And I would echo Mike's opening remarks, that I think we should do away with a direct income tax and go back to some other form of taxation. The federal government relies so much on the federal income tax. People would say, well, where are we going to get the money from to run the government? But if we cut government, then we don't need as much money to run it. And obviously, that would need the elimination of a lot of the functions that government has taken over the years that I mentioned in my opening remarks.
Harry, too much, too little, or just right?
Well, obviously too little, because we have a deficit. And ideally, you want your expenditures to equal your income. So either we're spending too much or we're not collecting enough in taxes. If you went back to 2000, what was it? Well, the year 2000, when George W. Bush was elected, we were projected to have a surplus in the trillions of dollars. And that was at a very low tax rate. It was 39.6 being the maximum income tax rate. And what was it, three other categories, three other indexes for the income tax. You know, when Ronald Reagan came in, the maximum rate was 70%, and he cut it to 40. That's a pretty dramatic change. Changing from 39% to 30 is not that big a jump. And conversely, it wouldn't be that big a jump to go back. The issue I have with you know, cutting spending is that all that, you know, this is our government. It's supposedly the government of, for, and by the people. So it's not us versus them. So you have to figure out all those different constituencies in there that drive those costs. The you know, government is not just for today, it's for what comes tomorrow. So we need to look at that.
Mike, are we paying too much, too little, or just right?
Way too much. As I mentioned earlier, we need to eliminate those. They've played so many games in politics and special interest in manipulating the tax code for this one or that one. It needs to completely be demolished and institute something simple in a consumption tax. I mean, I would like to see no taxes. I'm sure everybody else would too. But the way we have it now and what we're paying for, the government's doing too much, and it's still not enough. The Federal Reserve Bank continues to print monopoly money, ruining the value of our dollar, and it's still not enough. So how is it ever going to be enough? So we need to end the way we've been doing things. We need to end the Federal Reserve System. We need to end the current tax system and fix the problems that have been so prevalent in this country for decades, and nobody does anything about it.
The U.S. Constitution is very unique in the history of nations in that it severely limited the powers of the federal government and reserved most of the powers to the states. To you, Harry, are there examples of where you believe the federal government has exceeded its constitutional limitations?
Yeah, I think the National Defense Authorization Act is a prime example. I don't think one person should have the right to declare somebody a terrorist and have them killed. You know, there's a due process. We should follow due processes in this country. So there's a prime example of where we've exceeded our, the constitutionality of what's going on in this country.
Wayne, areas that you believe that the federal government has exceeded its constitutional limitations?
Boy, where do we start? In my opening remarks, obviously, as Harry said, the Patriot Act, the Department of Homeland Security, creation of these agencies, the spying on people, and the suspension of habeas corpus. Actually, you can lock somebody up for as long as you want. Don't have to charge them. On the commercial side, the commercial clause of the Constitution has been stretched and stretched and stretched. That anybody doing any type of commerce, falls under the federal government. And fortunately, some of our states out west, like Montana and so forth, are trying to limit at least intrastate commerce to get the federal government out of the regulations, the over-regulations that they've exceeded their authority.
Mike?
Where the question should be, where isn't they are they in violation of the Constitution? There's such a long list, and as a matter of fact, I made a long list on my website about it. You can see it there on things that I believe are unconstitutional and we should eliminate. But if the government if we look to the government to solve all of our problems, why would the founders have listed specifically the powers that Congress has, the powers that the President has, and the powers that the Supreme Court has in the Constitution? If they were going to be in control of everything, why would they list those things in there? All these years since then, they've gone and taken more power away from the states, amassed more power. It belongs in the states, the vast majority of what our federal government does. So the better question, I guess, would have been, what doesn't, so.
We know that Congress wields legislative power, but the executive is able to have tremendous power through regulatory agencies. Mike, we'll start with you. What are some of those agencies that you think have gone far beyond the legislative authority that Congress has provided?
Well, we can go down the alphabet, but just the big ones. Education Department was created to improve our country's education, and each year it's going down. So that's a failure. The EPA has overstepped its boundaries when they start telling you what light bulbs to use and what size toilet tank to use. I think they've overstepped their boundaries. The Department of Energy was created during the Carter administration to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. I don't think that's working either. They've amassed way too much power, and like I mentioned before, most of that power belongs in the states where we have a direct influence on our representatives, when we have a better opportunity to have an influence in politics, as opposed to now where it's just basically dictated down on how we're supposed to do things.
Wayne?
On a cabinet level, Homeland Security, I'm not saying we should get rid of the Coast Guard. My grandfather served there in the Second World War, but the Department of Homeland Security should be broken up, those agencies that fall under that. In the cabinet level, some of them can go, certainly TSA can go. Put security back with the airlines before 9/11 as it was. You'll get treated a lot better as a customer rather than just cattle going through and getting prodded and groped and whatever, having to take your belt off and your shoes off. Education department, that's not the business of the federal government. And Department of Energy, again, they haven't done their duty. Again, our dependency on oil, foreign oil, is a lot greater. Health, let's see, what have we got here? Health and Human Services, HUD. Labor can go back to Commerce. On the agency level, again, EPA needs to be scaled way back. I don't disagree with Mike that, excuse me, I don't disagree with Harry. We need clean water and clean air, but some of these regulations have gone a little overboard. The Small Business Administration, they've got so many different programs that overlap, it's just a waste of money. And we can get rid of the economic advisors because they haven't done anything either.
Harry, are the regulators, the unelected bureaucrats that run these agencies, are they overreaching their powers?
I don't know that they're necessarily overreaching their powers. I think they're going about it the wrong way. I've talked to a lot of farmers in Adams County who have to deal with different levels of regulation at the federal level. One of them being the dealing with immigrant labor, and the other one dealing with the Environmental Protection Agency. And I've talked to the Farm Bureau, and they all come up with the same kind of general complaint. They all agree for the need for regulation. You know, if you have a garden, you don't regulate it, you have a jungle. But they also really all came to a common statement where they said, you know, they don't have to be so arrogant. You know, they don't have to come into my house and treat me with disdain, come into my business and treat me with disdain. And I completely agree with that. That needs to be changed in terms of the way the government interfaces with the people that it's intended to serve. You know, we are in a unique position. We're both the employer and the customer in this case. And there should be a fine line that the government person has to walk in order to satisfy both of those conditions. So I think that if elected, that's something I would definitely approach. I would ask to sit in on some of these meetings between the government and people in my district.
At the state level, across the country, every state legislature and governor must balance its budget. They cannot spend more than they have coming in. That is not the case at the federal level. We'll start with you, Harry. Would you support a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution?
No. No, it's the federal government is not like your household. It's not like a business. It's not like the state government. The federal government is intended to smooth out the economy in this country. When the economy goes bad and people are out of work, the government should be spending money like crazy. And when the economy is good, the government should cut way back, okay? That's Keynesian. If you want to believe in supply side, be my guest. Supply side is what got us to where we are today. So, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine, and I respect yours. You know, so we'll let it go at that. But that's where I'm coming from. I'm a Keynesian. I think that if we run government like that, you know, look at Katrina. If we had to balance the budget, we'd never been able to help people out with Katrina. We never would have been able to fight some of the wars we fought. I mean, you have to have flexibility. What you need to do is send smart people to Washington who know how to balance a budget and tell them this is how you do it. And in good times, you cut back. And in bad times, you spend money. You run a deficit. In good times, you run a surplus. That's what you need to do. I don't think you need a constitutional amendment to tell you how to run the government.
Wayne, do you support a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget?
I do not. The Constitution amendments should be reserved for our most important and basic rights. It's very hard to get a constitutional amendment passed. You know, 2/3 of the states have to approve it. The reason I oppose a constitutional amendment is because in time of emergencies, most likely war, I'm an amateur historian, and I look back on the Second World War. How would we have ever fought and defeated fascism and the Imperial Japanese if we'd have balanced the budget at that time? So I don't think we should tie our hands with a constitutional amendment. I favor a balanced budget, but I think we can do it without an amendment to the Constitution.
Mike?
I do favor a balanced budget amendment. I think in times of war, there was a bill this past term that they tried to pass, but it was a weak bill and it wasn't worded very well, in which they wanted to try and pass a balanced budget law except for in times when we're in armed conflict. Well, when was the last time we weren't in armed conflict? So we need to look at it in a different way, maybe in times of constitutionally, congressionally declared war, then we make exceptions for the balanced budget, but I do believe we should have a balanced budget.
Wayne, what is the best way to develop our economy? Is it through tax incentives and subsidies and loan guarantees, or are there better ways to stimulate job growth and wealth creation in America?
Well, I think we need to cut down on the over-regulations that are handcuffing our industries and our businesses. I do not favor subsidies. I have a farm down in southern York County, 82 acres. I also have a full-time job in Baltimore, so I don't do a whole lot of farming myself. I grow some Christmas trees, but I rent out my fields to some of my neighbors. And when I got into this mess of running for Congress, I kind of felt them out a little bit, and I said, "Well, how about these farm subsidies?" I kind of went out on a limb. I said, "You know, I don't believe in that." And they said, "Here." They said, "We're not getting any of it. It's the big corporate farms that are getting subsidies." And government shouldn't play favorites like they did with the GM bailout, and they shouldn't. So I'm against subsidies, and I'm for unfeathered business and industry.
Mike, what's your thoughts? How should we be developing our economy?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is, especially at this time of year when all we're hearing is politicians tell you how many jobs they've created, is that it's a lie. The only jobs that they've created are government jobs. That's the only jobs that government can create. The best thing that government can do is get out of the way. I'm a free market person, unlike Mr. Perkinson, who said he was a Keynesian. I'm an Austrian, and if you do any research on Austrian economics, you let the free market have at it. The less government involvement, the better. Obviously, you have charities and other organizations to help out those that are less fortunate than everyone else, but you got to get out of the way. Once you unleash the power of the market will correct itself. It means no bailouts for anybody. Who decides which bank or which financial corporation is allowed to continue, and the other one's got to go bankrupt? That shouldn't be government's job. It should be the market's job.
Harry, how should we be growing our economy?
First of all, let's talk about free markets. Markets aren't free. If we had a truly free market, there'd be no intellectual property. You know, Apple wouldn't have the devices they have and the protections that they have to develop them. You wouldn't have the job you have because we'd have immigrant labor in here doing it far cheaper than you're doing it. So there's regulation in the market. The market is regulated. It's not a free market. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we have to be, the economy will run gangbusters once it gets primed. And right now, there's $3 trillion sitting on the sideline that nobody's investing because there's no demand. There's factories out there that are running below capacity, and nobody's going to build a new factory or more capacity with no demand. So in order to get the demand going, my recommendation would be to invest in infrastructure. We haven't invested in infrastructure in this country for the last 50 years or so. The last major investment we made in that regard was the space program, going to the moon. You know, when you drive home tonight, count the number of times your cars bounce on the potholes. Look at the number of bridges that are need repair in this thing. We stimulate the economy, we get people back to work, the economy grows on its own. Then the government backs out and lets it run.
We were told that if we stimulated the economy in 2009, that today we would be looking at unemployment at under 6% by the president's projections. Did we just not do enough, Harry?
No, we didn't. That stimulus was divided up into 3 categories, and only a small portion of it went into infrastructure. A large portion of it went into a one-time tax cut to everybody in the country, where we spent like everybody got what, $300 or $600, and then the other part of it was aid to states, so that we had they didn't lay people off. And it worked, that part of it worked until 2010 when the money ran out, and then states started laying people off. So that's where we got the bump in unemployment. The stimulus that we're talking about needs to be massive. It needs to be...
Like what? How much would you have...
I don't know. I don't have an exact number. But let me put it this way. Right now, money's cheap. You know, a 10-year bond is 1.5%. A 30-year bond is 2.4%. You can't get a mortgage for that. Well, actually, some of you can. But that's really cheap money. And we have massive unemployment, and this is the time we need to be doing the investing in infrastructure. That's how we get our economy going.
Welcome to Scott Perry. Glad you could join us.
Hello. Hey, gents.
We've covered everything, so we're done. Hardly. We were we were just talking about the best way to develop our economy. Why don't I think everybody has answered that. Scott, if you'd like to jump in, please feel free. Your thoughts. I press it as, should we be going the direction of subsidies and loans and tax incentives, or is there a better way to stimulate our economy? And Harry was just saying that we needed to spend more money, that the stimulus was too small for us, that spending more would have done better.
Well, I've never been a fan of Keynesian economic theory, which of course is government stimulating the economy. In my opinion, what all levels of government, whether it's local, federal, or state, need to do is get out of the way of the business owners and the free market and the job creators, so that they can do what they do best. Close some of the tax loopholes and lower some of the rates so that more people are producing. When we got upwards of over 40% of people not paying income tax, that concerns me, and I think that we all need to be invested in the future of our nation in that way, and that helps drive the correct decisions for government. And so I would be an advocate for that, but I am not an advocate for stimulus or government picking winners and losers. I think the free market does the best job at doing that.
Let me ask you one question kind of related that preceded this. You know that at the state level you have to balance the budget. Sure. You cannot spend more than you have coming in. If you go to Congress, you've got that, those reins are lifted off of you. Would you support a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution?
I absolutely do support the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I've been working at the state level to see if we could force the federal government to do that from the state perspective.
Very good. Let's move on. A question that was asked to be asked is with regard to Paul Ryan's budget as he laid things out. Certainly was the House proposal. We'll start with you, Wayne. Your thoughts on Paul Ryan's ideas for how we spend money at the federal level?
Well, to be honest with you, I've just started to explore his budget, but if I'm correct, he doesn't really eliminate the deficit until something like 2030, and Mr. Romney's budget doesn't eliminate the deficit until 2020. We don't have that amount of time. We've got to do something about this runaway spending. in the next couple of years, maybe next year, because we simply don't have the time to see decades or go by in the same vein that we've been spending money in Washington. So I think his budget reduces the size of the growth of the deficit, but the deficit will still grow in the next couple of years, and I think we've got to work on that right away.
Harry?
The numbers don't add up for Mr. Ryan's budget. Some people run the numbers and they don't start to balance the budget until 2060, and he doesn't tell you what he's going to cut. In order to even come close, he's got to cut almost everything except for military spending. So that means you lose out on the CDC. You don't have the Center for Disease Control. So you don't have air traffic control. You don't have all these things that we take for granted when we say government spending. And those things go away because the money isn't in his budget for that. He can't hit his numbers without cutting dramatically those programs. And the math isn't there. It doesn't add up.
Mike?
Well, unlike some people, I'm not going to vote or comment on something I haven't fully read. But from what I know of the highlights of his budget plan, like Mr. Wolf mentioned, it doesn't balance it for quite some time, 30 years or so, 20 years. We need to do something quickly. Our country's headed off a financial cliff. And the longer we wait, the more we drag our feet, the quicker we come to that cliff's edge. He also, from what I understand, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't address military spending. I'm all for a strong defense, but we need to defend our country and not all these other countries. I think there's plenty out there that we can cut as well.
Scott?
I think that and I think it's characterized as the path to prosperity is fairly specific, and it does address the debt and the deficit. And while I would agree that it takes too long, in my opinion, to get to a balanced budget circumstance, I think it's a realistic budget that both Democrats, Republicans, liberals, and conservatives can actually support while keeping the federal government running, but heading us in the right direction. We've got $16 trillion in debt, and we didn't get there overnight, and we're not going to get back overnight either. And while there might be some subtleties and some particular things that each one of us disagrees with, the framers of the Constitution wanted each side, the House and the produce a budget, and when they couldn't get along and couldn't agree, to come together and put it in a conference so that the American people knew what the priorities of their nation were from the people that represent them. And while the Senate has not passed a budget in 1,200 days, the Apple iPad that a lot of people use was not on the streets the last time the Senate passed a budget. Nothing's going to happen, not the Paul Ryan budget or anybody else's budget, as long as the Senate fails to act, and this government's going to continue to be stalled. Thank you.
Everyone agrees that the current trends in Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are unsustainable at their current rates. What would you do to fix these programs? We'll start with you, Scott.
Well, I think that Social Security, while in the past has not been, it's more solvent than it has been in the past, and it's not as critical as has been, although I think that better management would allow for cost of inflation and cost of living adjustment for seniors that are dependent on Social Security. I think the bigger nut to crack for the federal government is Medicare and Medicaid, and particularly taking out the $700 billion out of Medicare that the president's health care plan would do imperils that program desperately. The first thing I would do and plan to do if I get an opportunity is to vote to repeal in its entirety the president's health care plan. Thank you. But I think that there also needs to be a solution on the other side. I think that tort reform on a grander scale needs to be considered so that the awards that are made to those aggrieved who have had horrible things happen to them in the medical field can actually get the money, as opposed to the attorneys that represent them. Lion's shares going to those who have been afflicted. I think that we need to have portability across state lines, and I'm a states' rights guy, but I think the ability to sell insurance and buy insurance across state lines allows for competition so that we can have choices. I do not agree with the president's health care plan, which separates patients and providers, and I think that that is the key to solving the Medicare, Medicaid problem, to open up access and to get those 30 million people something that they can afford. And affordability is the key. Thank you.
Harry, your thoughts on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security? Are they sustainable?
I think Social Security is in pretty good shape. It could be a couple things that we could do to it to make sure that in the time period where they're saying that we'd only be able to pay 3/4 of the benefits with incoming funds, we can, I think there's things we could do to change that. In terms of Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare is not sustainable the way it is. The $760 billion Mr. Perry is referring to came out of money to providers, not money to beneficiaries. And that was used to sustain the program, Part A, for a longer period of time. Part B is run by, it's the general hospitalization, the general medical service, and that's paid through a premium through each individual, and the rest of the balance of the money comes out of the general funds. We really need to find some way to cost control, develop slower cost growth in medical spending. And the Affordable Care Act has actually done that in the last 2 years. The cost growth rate for medical spending is dropped to 4% a year. It's still higher than the inflation rate, which is 2.5% last year. We need to get it down to the inflation rate or below that. But right now it's doing what it's designed to do, and it's dropping the cost there.
That's a good stop there, Harry. He saw that sign and he put on the brakes. Before we move on, Harry, because Scott brought this up of the Affordable Care Act, he said that he would vote to repeal it. What would you do about that? And then when the other two respond, please give your response to that.
I support the Affordable Care Act, and I do so because it's going to save us money. It's going to provide health care access to 30 million people who haven't been paying for it heretofore. You've been paying for it. Actually, there's 50 million people that you're paying for, and now 30 million of them get to go onto the insurance rolls. It's affordable. There are a lot of doctors I've talked to that really find it attractive once they get into the details of it, and it's a step in the right direction. My biggest objection to the Affordable Care Act right now is there's really no cost control. Doctors don't have any incentive to not prescribe tests. Patients don't have any incentives not to take tests. And, you know, those two things arc into an ever-increasing cost growth. And those things need to be fixed. And there are several mechanisms by which we could do that. But overall, it's a good approach. It's going to save us $120 billion over the next 10 years on the deficit. So, and it still gives us health care for a lot of people that don't have it.
Mike, your thoughts? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Affordable Care Act.
I think we need to look, and hopefully there's no postal carriers in here tonight, but if we can't even deliver the mail in a cost-effective manner, how can we expect our government to control our health care, our retirement planning? You name it, they're in control of it. And you guys can be my witnesses in here tonight when somebody says, well, he wants to get rid of Social Security. I do. But over a period of many decades, because we can't afford it. The CBO and the GAO do reports all the time that they're unsustainable, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And I would be for full repeal right now while we can still do it, or the Affordable Health Care Act. But it has to be done over a period of decades. If there's going to be any kind of plan, it has to be done at the state level or local level. And that's where people get help anyway. That's where things can be investigated. There's rampant fraud in all of those. And I hate to throw my father out there, his age right now, but he's in the back as well. He just started with the Social Security and Medicare this year, and I had to, listen to him try to explain how all these programs worked, and he didn't really understand them either, and all that other nonsense that you have to go through when you first start doing that. It's too much, and I think we need to gradually eliminate all of those because they're unsustainable, and they're going to continue to be unsustainable.
Wayne?
Well, in my opening remarks, I mentioned that back during Benjamin Franklin's day, there was no Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, education grants, or foreign aid. unfortunately, I think we've come down a path too far to put the genie back in the bottle. We have to work with some of these programs that we have. Ultimately, Mike has a good idea to get government out of a lot of these programs. Social Security, I'm 60 years old, getting ready to turn 61 in February. I'm probably well enough off that with my savings that I've had with a 40-year career at one company, I could probably live without it. But, you know, I look out across this audience, and there's a lot of older people that probably depend upon that Social Security. So we can't necessarily scrap it, but I would like to try to cut down on that if we can. Perhaps to make it a little more solvent, since people are living well into their 80s, maybe raise it up from 66 to 68 to bring some more money in. As far as Medicare and Medicaid is concerned, everybody talks about Medicaid fraud. Instead of hiring 10,000 or 12,000 IRS agents to go find the people that aren't going to get insurance and get them to pay their $750 fine, let's put that effort towards cutting down on fraud.
Let's talk about some energy policy, and we'll start with you, Harry. What should be our nation's energy policy, and do you support continuing use of nuclear power and fossil fuels, or do you think we should be moving towards alternative energy?
Yeah, I do. I think we should move towards alternative energy. We should develop safe nuclear capabilities, and we should start looking at how we're going to wean ourselves from the fossil fuel dependency that we have. In particular, oil. If we can get rid of oil, we can get out of the Middle East. You know, we don't have to make veterans by sending them to fight for oil in the Middle East. And oil is a fungible product, so we drop our demand for oil. We drop the price for oil, and we limit the amount of money that goes into the groups that are fighting us, you know, at a terroristic level. I think that by using the proper mix of energy alternatives, we could significantly change our energy use profile in this country. It would be economic of economic benefit. It would be of strategic benefit, and it would be of an environmental benefit in the long run too.
Mike?
Like I mentioned earlier, the Department of Energy was created to reduce our dependence on fire and oil, and obviously it doesn't work. We need to find more free market solutions. I don't understand why people are looking to the federal government to allow drilling in ANWR. If Alaska's government and their people want to drill in ANWR, let Alaska and their people drill in ANWR. Why does the national government have anything to say about it? I think it also applies to the pipeline. The pipeline goes through many different states. And we see this in Pennsylvania with the fracking. We also have to be concerned about the environment, obviously, but when you do use eminent domain, when the government uses eminent domain to take away your property because there's energy there, or there might be energy there, that's just wrong. So if it's in the states, it needs to be handled by the states. I think between states, federal government, private companies, things could work, but we need to not dictate any kind of policy as we're moving to solar. The federal government shouldn't be doing that. The federal government shouldn't be building windmills. They don't own any companies as far as I'm aware of other than General Motors, but I don't think they own any energy companies. So the federal government needs to stay out of it as much as possible.
Scott?
I support a market-based, all the above strategy that includes fossil fuel and alternative energy sources as well. I just don't support, again, government picking winners and losers. Right here in Pennsylvania, taxpayers through their state and federal subsidies have paid for about $200 million for a corn ethanol plant in Clearfield County that's been dormant for, I think it just reopened, but it's been dormant for the last 3 years. And in the meantime, we're looking at a drought in the Midwest. Feedstock prices are going up because there's a federal mandate that a certain amount of it goes into your gas tank. And arguably, it's not as efficient as gasoline. It costs more to make than gasoline. And if you own a lawnmower, you know that you can't leave it in the lawnmower for more than 2 months because it's no good. So, I think that we shouldn't have turned our greatest trading partner away, Canada, with the Keystone Pipeline, and turned them to China, where they're going to sell that oil. China is not very environmentally friendly. We live in the cleanest country in the world, and I'm not sure how folks that are against the pipeline are bettering the planet's environment to forcing that oil. Canada's going to sell that oil to one country or another, and they should sell it to America. And I also don't understand how $4, maybe we're heading to $5 a gallon gas is good for poor people or middle class people. And I think that the current energy policy is very misguided, and I think it reflects on our economy 1% growth when it should be 3 or 4%. I think it hurts every single one of us every day.
Okay, with our time here, we're about 10 minutes to 9, and what I'd like to do is we will give some closing remarks, some of the... I'm sorry? Oh, did I forget Wayne? I'm sorry. Sorry, Wayne. Can't see you over there.
That's all right. Well, I want to preface my remarks to say that I work for an energy company. I worked for Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for the last 40 years, so I know a little bit about the energy business. And as far as electric generation is concerned, we need a good mix using nuclear power, coal. China brings on about one fired coal plant a week over there, and they don't have any pollution regulations, any air quality standards at all over there. We have good air quality standards in this country. We should be using clean coal technology to generate our electricity. I agree with Scott and Mike. We should have built that Keystone Pipeline to bring Canadian oil down here, and renewables like wind energy and solar have to stand on their own. You see what happens with companies like Solandra, where the government starts to pick winners. The winners are their cronies and the people that are connected. But the other problem with renewables is they're not 24/7. The power companies still have to provide backup power when the sun's not shining or when the wind's not blowing. So it's just not a viable alternative to fossil fuels at this time.
Because Scott wasn't here at the beginning, would you like me to ask some of the earlier questions of Scott, or should we move to closing remarks? I'll kind of take by a nod of heads. Ask or ask him? No? This is like the Democratic convention of whether we're going to put God back in the platform. Well, let me ask just a couple of things. I will take the prerogative here and do the Villagrosa model here. Scott, given the things that are happening in Libya, what are your thoughts on the president's response as well as any critique of Governor Romney's?
Well, for me, quite honestly, I think the president's response was late and too little. I thought that Mitt Romney showed leadership, and quite honestly, I'm tired of watching my nation apologize for the great freedoms that we have. And I'm glad that Mitt Romney said what he said, and if it creates controversy and some tensions, I think it's a good discussion for our nations to have. I think that the president's foreign policy has been woefully misguided and inept, and if we have empowered people that are dangerous to the United States overall in the last 3.5 years.
One last one, and then all of you will have a time for 2 minutes of closing remarks. The last question for you, Scott, is the U.S. Constitution placed strict limits on the role of the federal government. Do you think that the federal government has exceeded its constitutional powers, and what examples would you give where you would like to roll back the federal government overreach?
Well, absolutely. The framers of the Constitution created our government, the federal government, to be weak so the states could be strong, and I think the 17th Amendment probably changed that significantly for all the states. But with that, the most brightest shining example for me is the loss of our individual rights to choose our own health care, which was recently enacted, and without the support of the American people, But from there to the over regulation of our we're looking at an EPA right now that wants to take control of what they will consider navigable waterways, which is the groundwater underneath your home and the puddles that form in your backyard when it rains, with the IRS and the hiring of thousands of new agents. I mean, we can go on for days and days and days, whether it's the Department of Energy, the Department of Education, like I said, one of my favorites, the IRS, but without a doubt, the federal government has and continues to overstep its bound, and the states are in some ways powerless to combat them because we send our tax dollars in, and the federal government continues to extort the states to get their tax dollars back.
All right, we're going to start with closing, and we're just going to work our way down here. We'll start with you, Mike. Closing remarks, 2 minutes of why you are the best candidate and that people should vote for you on November 6th.
Thanks, Matt.
I almost said November 7th. You'd be late.
Yeah, that's a little late. Thanks, everybody, for having me here. I do appreciate the opportunity to address everyone. I just want to make it clear that you do have a choice. You don't have to fill out the D or the R side. There are other people out here with other voices, and we're there because there's a reason for that. The Republicans and Democrats for decades have done the same thing in Washington. One of them's been in power for so long, then the next one gets in power for so long, and we continue to have the same problems. I want to go to Washington to fix the problems. From the top down, everything, I want to work on it. I don't want to play party games. There's going to be no party leaders behind me telling me what to do. And this area of the country has a good history. We were the first capital, and this is where the Declaration of Independence was signed. So I'm asking you to declare independence once more and vote for a Libertarian this November. Thank you.
Harry?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address your group tonight. What I'd like to say is that if elected to Congress, my responsibility is to represent everyone. And that is the sole pledge that I will take during this campaign. That if elected, my first and foremost responsibility will be representing everyone in the district, all 703,000 people, regardless of their party affiliation, regardless of their religious beliefs or any other aspects of their person. And I will do that by listening to what you have to say, and I will inform you as to the sort of decision process that I will use. So you'll be fully informed as to why I make the choices that I make on your behalf. I'm not doing this because I'm a career politician. I'm not doing it to become a career politician. I'm doing it because we have very serious problems in Washington that need to be addressed. I don't think party politics is going to answer those questions or address those problems. And I'm not going to go to Washington to carry water for the Democratic Party. I'm going to go to Washington to represent you and only you, not myself, not the party. Thank you very much. I hope I can count on your support on November the 6th.
Scott?
Thank you, Matt, and I'd like to say thanks to Scott and the organization for providing the opportunity. I apologize for being tardy. With that, I've been privileged to serve in Harrisburg as a representative, and I think that my votes and my stand on positions is very clear, and I think that most people who know me know that I have principles, and those are things I stand on, whether it's the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, my own party. I'm going to do the right thing every single time, regardless of the partisanship. With that, you also know my positions on the tax code. I am a spend less guy. I am a smaller government person. And like most of us, I want the government out of our lives. I've made the tough votes. I was one of the few votes to abolish property taxes. Unfortunately, that did not succeed, but we're still working on it. But I'm one of the few that went against my party and voted to abolish property taxes because I'm paying the same taxes as you are. I've been a community member in York County here for a very long time. I have been an employee and an employer. I've helped pull the wagon. I've got beautiful children and a lovely wife, and just like many of you, I'm very concerned about the future of our nation. 23 million Americans out of work or underemployed right now that we know of. 23 million. That's twice the size nearly of Pennsylvania. That is not the America I grew up in. We got more people on food stamps than ever, and we got less people paying their share of the taxes than ever. I'm running because I think that I can make a difference. I think I've made a difference in Harrisburg, and I think that I have the leadership ability, the capacity, and the temperament. Listen, we're not electing a king, and I'm not running for king, but I have strong principles, and I know that you have to work with all sides to get something accomplished. But I think that my values represent the 4th Congressional District very well, and I'd be privileged, very privileged to serve in that stead on your behalf. Thank you.
Wayne?
First of all, I'd like to thank Scott for having me tonight, inviting me tonight, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming out. It's really uplifting to see so many people engaged and concerned about the problems that are facing our nation. When I was out gathering signatures to get on the ballot, a lot of people, overwhelming number of people told me, when I mentioned, I said, I'm running as an independent, they said, hey, that's great, we need something different down there. I said earlier that I was a student of history. You know, the Federalist Party started out with Washington, and after a few generations or a few decades, it went away. And before the Republican Party was born in the 1850s, there was a Whig Party. Lincoln served in the House of Representatives as a Whig. So the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, they're not here forever. Things are created, and things come to an end. So there is another choice, and I'd like to think that I could represent a beginning of something new for this country in America. And if you send me to Washington, I will not be beholden to the Nancy Pelosi's and the John Boehners. I will vote and fight for legislation that will benefit the entire country as well as this district. Thank you again. Good night.
Yes, please thank the candidates for coming out tonight. We appreciate it, and thank you for running. Thank you, because we need people that are willing to stand up and go serve in the public. So, and thank you all for coming tonight and allowing me to be part of this. So, Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, candidates. Really appreciate it. I have a couple of closing comments. Jerry, who's just gotten up there with the suspenders on, he has some material over there that he's selling. That he, on his own, we allowed him to have a table here. There's an NRA table over here. And also, please throw your hat into the ring. We're not asking you to run for an office like these four gentlemen, but volunteer. We have 3 separate initiatives. One, with Americans for Prosperity, to make phone calls, making phone calls. 2, we have Jack and Sue Silcox in the back here, who are running the program to fill the bus to go up to Harrisburg. So that's an engagement where you go out on your own. You go up and you actually meet your legislators. And 3, we have Bill Fay, where you don't have to make a phone call. You don't have to go meet anybody. All you got to do is fill out a postcard. So there's 3 different things you can do: write, talk, and meet. So it should cover everybody in here. So we should have 120 different volunteers, all these 3 things. So I appreciate you coming out. There's only, how many days until the election? There's like 50-some days to the election. It's coming up like a freight train. So get out there. This is your country. Take it by the neck, and good luck. Thank you for coming out. Thank you to the candidates again. I appreciate it. And we'll see you. Oh, I want to bring this up in October. I did not have on the agenda of our October meeting, because right now we don't know when it is, because we're working with the Tom Smith campaign to get him in here for the meeting. It's going to be October 11th or October 25th. It depends on which day works out best for him. We're going to have him. We're going to have some other candidates. So it'll be a good meeting. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.